Hi, welcome to TamiyaSC. I'm Ramon Gutierrez. Today we are going to be talking about 3 questions brought to us by viewers like you, and they are about wheel size, poles, and hollow axles versus non-hollow axles. So our first question comes from our good buddy Michael Yim, and he asks, are small wheels any good? How come everyone's cars seem to be using large wheels? And so the deal with that is actually the diameter and radius of a wheel. The diameter of a wheel is the distance of a wheel from one point to the other. And so it's a line that cuts all the way across the center of the wheel. And the bigger the diameter usually means the bigger the radius. And so the radius is from this point of the wheel, or any point of the wheel, all the way around until it touches that point again. So if we look at this, and if we look at a small wheel, you can see that the smaller wheel obviously has a smaller diameter and radius. If we were to cut these wheels apart and make that so that way it's one fat, flat, smooth line, you'll notice that the large diameter wheel is going to be longer than the smaller wheel. So what does that mean? So what? Who cares? Well, if you go here, and let's say there are 2 identical cars, and the only difference between them is the wheel size. One has the large wheel, one has the small wheel. Well, if we put this on this ruler, let's measure this nice and good. All right, so here we have a wheel. We're going to spin it all the way around until we've made one complete turn. All right, that's one complete turn. This wheel has gone pretty far. We ended at about the 100 mark on this. And if we take a small diameter wheel, I'm going to do it this way. All right. Let's have that roll all the way around. Boop. This is now the distance of one wheel. We're at the 130 mark. So we're looking at about a difference of 30 millimeters from this point back here. That doesn't mean that this is 130 millimeters or anything like that. All we can tell is that one went 30 millimeters farther than the other one. And what that means is that since the larger wheel is bigger, it can actually go farther, make your car go farther for the less amount of spin, technically. So when your motor makes one whole rotation around, that means that this wheel is also going one rotation around. Kind of. We'll go more into that later when we talk about gears. But for every single time this rotates once, this will always go farther. And that's why big wheels are technically better. It'll get your car farther, faster, for the same amount of rotations per RPMs, rotations per minute. Because if you have the same motor as somebody else and the difference is in wheels, then the larger wheel will get you farther. But there's a couple differences and whatnot. Our good buddies at Tamiya USA say that small diameter wheels are good for a quick start, but not for top speed. Small diameter tires lower the center of gravity and help your car corner better. And as for large diameter wheels, good top speed and suitable for long straights, better shock absorption for bumpy course joints. So since the courses are made as pieces that connect like this, sometimes they're uneven and whatnot, a larger wheel will be able to take that bump a little bit better. As for taking jumps, the small diameter wheel will be a little bit more stable, and the large diameter will be less stable. So when you work on your car and whatnot, you have to put that into mind and whatnot. The cars with smaller wheels will bounce up just a little less, and that has to do with pretty much friction and how much stress a wheel can take. But here's the interesting thing. You have this large diameter wheel and you have this large diameter wheel, and the difference between them is friction. So this wheel, all the black that you see there is going to be touching the track. This wheel, as you can see, it's white and it's dirty already, and just that thin black line that's on it is the only part that's touching the track. When looking at your wheels and whatnot, the thinner the wheel and the less friction that you have on it, pretty much the better and the easier it is for your motor to push the car along. So that means that you're going to be able to do kind of get a better speed. Is it more stable? No. This is definitely much more unstable than this. but it all depends on how fast you want to go. But here's an even more interesting thing. This actually small diameter wheel is really different than the regular wheels that you see here. This wheel is just regular plastic on the inside, and this is just regular rubber on the outside. If you were to race two exactly the same cars with just this, of course, the smaller wheel will not win because of that diameter difference, the radius difference. But when it comes against this specific type of wheel, where we have a carbon reinforced plastic center and super hard tires, this one actually might do better because this will corner better, not only because it's a smaller diameter, but it's also has much more friction because it's a harder tire. So you may be asking, okay, so obviously if I want to go faster, I go with a larger tire, but if I want to be more stable, I go with the smaller tire. Is there an in-between I can choose? And yes, there totally is. Tamiya has all different types of wheels. On their diagram here, it shows 4, 2 smalls and 2 larges. But one of the more popular things to do is that you take a large diameter wheel and you cut it down. So this was originally made, actually this was made by my good buddy Alvin, and he took a hard tire and he cut it down and he placed it onto this spoke or wheel. So you put the tire on the wheel, double-sided taped it. So put double stick tape on around it and then put this wheel on it, and then you cut it down. So that means that we now have a large diameter spoke with a really small cut wheel, which actually makes it about the size of this small diameter wheel, which makes this wheel really stable, and it now makes this wheel really stable. But this has more plastic than this because this still has all the rubber on it, and this cut down the rubber to something really thin. This is supposed to actually be more stable than this because the plastic won't bend or bounce as much as the rubber on here. Even though this is hard rubber, this is also hard rubber. So hard rubber on this hard plastic with less hard rubber is going to be a little bit more stable and bounce a little bit less than this, unless you have a really light car. So that's the basics that I can give on the wheels. And I believe the popularity to the larger wheels is because they're just generally faster. People in Tamiya Mini 4-wheel drive always want to go fast, and that's great and that's good, but it's hard sometimes. Faster doesn't always mean more stable, and that's going to be like the point of all my lessons and whatnot. You can have an extremely fast car, but you also got to make sure it's really stable, and there's some very, very advanced stuff to have the large diameter wheels and have a really light car and make it really fast. So more about that later. Hopefully I'll have a guest come in and explain all that because I'm not pro when it comes to that. So our next question comes to us from AIBAN01, AIBAN01, AIBAN01. Unfortunately, I have no idea how to say your name. It's rad though. And so they ask us the length. Can I explain the length of the poles and where the rollers go? I'm assuming that you're talking about where the rollers go on the pole itself. I hope that's what you're talking about. Otherwise, that's an extremely complicated question. So here are some tuning tips according to the roller position for from our good buddies at Tamiya. And they say that the low position is suitable for straightaway sections, but be careful because once you can sometimes make contact. So for example, this would be a low position, and this is really low to the ground. So when this car takes up from the ground, these rollers are definitely going to hit, and we're going to want that to as little as possible as we can, because what we would rather have touching there is a brake. So that's for low positions, really good for straights. The middle position is actually, according to Tamiya Mini 4-wheel drive, or TamiyaUSA.com, it's the best setting for straights and curves. So about here, around the very top of the axle or right below the axle of your wheel, that's the best setting, period. But it kind of is, it kind of isn't, because you can always get things more stable. And actually, that's where we talk about the high position. They say that it's very stable in turns, best for technical courses with many turns. But you got to be careful because sometimes the top rollers can ride along the wall. So as the car bounces and whatnot, these top rollers might hit the wall and become stuck. The same thing can actually happen for the bottom rollers and whatnot, sometimes the car would land in the track like this and just get completely stuck. There we go. So it would land like that, and the roller would be outside of the track or caught on the wall. So you got to be careful with those bottom rollers as well. And as for which position it's best, in the Philippines, they have a style of rollers where they have front rollers right here, and they're 19 millimeters, so that way they're really, really stable. And they have two more rollers right in the middle, as high as that they can get them, pointing down a little bit. And if you've never seen those, please look it up. I would show you a picture of one myself, but unfortunately I haven't made one yet. And when I do make one, I'll definitely show you. But those are really interesting because those have really high rollers right in the middle of the car, and those can gain a lot of stability and whatnot. So as for the different types of poles, I brought some out for you. And this, unfortunately, I don't know the names for all of these, but this pole comes in a few kits. And what it is it's just two screws at the end. You have all this smooth space right here, and then you have like a permanent lock nut right here. And what I like to do is put this on my cars. And so as you can see here, this one's upside down, depending on the spacers. And so pretty much you put the spacers wherever they go. And for AR chassis, I try to get the roller 3 millimeters away from the bottom if they're 19 millimeter rollers. Or sometimes you can just use screws. That's fine as well. But how high they are or how low they are depends on how your car runs. So since we're going to be talking about the Tamiya class with jumps and everything and whatnot, you don't want them put them too low to the ground, so that way they don't get in the way of your brake. So here's our little brake. And yet again, it's right below the axle or so. If you stick around the axle, you're going to be pretty good for your bottom roller. Or if you just want to stick with the middle rollers, you can do that as well. As for the top and whatnot, I have yet to see a car where the rollers are too high up top. You can go up to 70 millimeters off the ground for your car, and that should be fine, to be absolutely honest. I haven't seen anybody max out that 70 millimeter top, but I believe this is a 40 millimeter top, and nobody's even gone past this. I've never seen anybody go with that high. Let's see. This is... Oh, no. This is about 50 millimeters. So this is 50 millimeters tall. If we add 20 more millimeters from here to here, that's how high you're legally allowed to go. It's really high up. Like, it's above her head. And this is already an extremely large car because it's special edition. But you can do whatever you want when it comes to the height. I mean, if you're going to be super scientific about it, the higher you go, the more bend of the plate you'll have. So as you can see here, if I do this, if I just do cause some stress, the plate starts to bend. And the higher that is up there, the more unflexible it becomes. The closer your wheels are to the FRP plate, the more stable it's going to be. That's why 19 millimeter rollers right down here, as informed by Jan, that makes it much more stable for the FRP plate. But the farther it goes out, the less stable it becomes. But it's very rare for the car to really not be able to handle that. You can put them almost anywhere and be okay, so long as you're using a hyper dash or less. If you're using a sprint dash or a hyper dash or even an ultra dash, and you're staying in the track for a Tamiya race, that's really impressive and that's really rare. So don't worry too much about the length of the rollers yet. There's some extremely advanced players who have an exact measurement for where they want to go. But to be absolutely honest, the closer you are to the plate, the more stable you're going to become. The farther away from the plate, you're going to, if you put two of them, you will be stable. So like this is pretty stable. But if I were to put it here, according to the G's or the force on the track, that would be even more stable. Is it really worth it to have your wheels super close? Not so much. It's okay. You can have it up here and you can make it loosey-goosey. For a pole like this one, which is a pretty standard pole, I always like to put them as far out to the edges that I can because this is a particularly small screw. An alternative, though, to that are these. And what these are is that these are actually the shafts from the motor. So these are from the center of the motor, and I followed a tutorial online by a good buddy named John, and he showed us through a couple pictures on how to take our motor apart and gain these shafts. Well, what's so interesting about these is that you can hammer these into your plate. You can screw a little hole, hammer them in. You can put some plastic spacers on it and really fit it in. It's really complicated. But these don't bend. So in other words, I could bend this. I don't think I can do it with my bare hands. This one's already slightly bent. Nope, can't do that with my hands. But a crash will definitely ruin these if you crash too much. But these are the hardest poles that I know that you can get, and these are so sturdy. I've never seen one of these bend before. And also because they're thick, you can actually just hammer your roller right into it. Look, I just barely pressed on it, and it's already staying in pretty well. The deal with these, though, is that you have to hammer them in, and you have to have these on the top and bottom. This is a double shaft pole, and this is a single shaft pole. So when you look at the motor for like an MA, the difference between an MA and an AR, the motor will use this, and MA, a motor will use this because it has to be longer to have both gears on both sides. So having the rollers on top for both of these is extremely good. It's really stable and whatnot because these are so difficult. And as you can see, it spins pretty well on top just by pushing it in. It makes it permanent when you hammer these in because you have to hammer them in. But I highly suggest taking your time with it. Work on this way later. But if you're really itching for it now, ask in the comments, and I'll try to link to you the pictures of the tutorial. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to take a motor apart. Of course, use a stock motor that's broken or a broken motor that doesn't work anymore. Break that apart and figure it out yourself. It's not too hard. But of course, if you're under 18, have adult supervision. All right, so our last question comes from BP Looms. And this is just the last question for today. The next couple episodes, we're going to be talking about some different stuff. But we have the difference of hollow axles and non-hollow axles. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. This is a wheel axle. This is a standard one that comes in. It's not hollow. There are different sizes of these depending on your car. So for example, a Super XX chassis has longer axles, while a Super 2 chassis has smaller axles. And the difference between a product where this is hollow, and to be absolutely honest, I had no idea these hollow shafts, stainless steel shafts, even existed. It's part 94640, and they're 60 millimeter hollow stainless steel shafts. I don't know if they come in any other sizes, but I actually never heard of this part until the question was asked, because I knew about these and I knew about the super hard shafts. So here's the deal. The regular shafts can bend over time, of course, depending on how much you crash and how much you use your car. But the thing is that if you have the hollow shafts, according to talking with JT and Edgar, they explained that the hollow shaft is 40% lighter than the regular shaft, and it's a bit more straight because it's an extra part that isn't just mass produced. They kind of fine tune it a little bit better. So the deal with the hollow shaft is not only is it lighter, which means your car will go faster, it'll have less to work against for the motor, but it will also apparently be more efficient because the part will be straighter. But there's a catch. The hollow shaft, because it's less sturdy, because it's hollow, it can bend and break more easily. So if you're going to go into a high-speed class like mod or semi-mod or even super stock, you're going to be pretty much breaking that shaft sooner or later, but your car is going to be going wicked fast. For according to JT, he highly suggests using a solid shaft like this one that comes into your box for a technical track because you will probably break the other one. It's too easy to bend. And then Edgar explained that it helps with the transmission system. So in other words, from the motor to the gears to the propeller shaft to the shafts of the wheels, people like to keep those system light as possible. So in other words, cutting weight on everything, literally everything. If there's a lighter part, they buy it. And so, of course, this has to do with the lighter the car, the faster the car, because the less work the motor has to do. I mean, that's the basics in all of racing. Um, and but of course, the cost of that is stability and how much damage that car can take before it breaks. So there are pluses and minuses and whatnot. And actually, it brings up the mini four-wheel drive hard shafts, which I actually just got in the mail. And this is a reinforced shaft made for Super X chassis, and it says TR1 chassis. And this was made for the RC components for Mini 4-wheel drive, but if I'm not mistaken, you're allowed to use these parts for Tamiya Mini 4-wheel drive as well. And these are reinforced shafts, and they're super hard. I mean, they're significantly harder than these shafts. And what these will do is not only will it weigh the car a little bit more, which is going against the whole lighter system, but the torque on this should be better because since there's more weight for the motor to actually push, there's technically more grip. So if you're looking for a car that can climb like giant hills or giant tracks and whatnot, you might want to go with these. But if you're looking for just speed, and having a really nice light car, I highly suggest go with the hollow axles. That's going to be it for questions today. We're going to be, over the next few weeks, looking at weights. That's going to be the next video after this weekend's race. And we're going to look at ratio and wheel and the size of the motor combos. That's going to be a very lengthy, crazy video because that's very complicated. And then pretty much the most asked question I have is like, hey, can you make a video or a video series just about the chassis themselves? And I'm just going to say this up front. That's going to take me a long time, but I'm going to work on it. I promise. We'll make it so that way we get the most information that we can. Either way, I hope that answered your questions. Please tune in for the next race. It's going to be recorded on Saturday, which means it's going to premiere on Monday or Tuesday next week. That will be on the September 22nd or September 23rd. So tune in for that. If you liked the video or if the video helped you at all, please hit the like button. You're always more than welcome to subscribe. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments or comments. That's great. Leave comments in the comments, of course. You knew that. I knew that too. Either way, I think that covers it for today. This is TamiyaSC. I'm Armand Gutierrez. See you next time.